There's a great chance that if you are running a business on spreadsheets, you are miserable doing so. Spreadsheets are great at some things, but we tend to use them, at least in society, for so many things that they were never intended to be used for. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down for us the 5 key things that spreadsheets do very poorly. But most importantly, I'm going to let you know what you can use instead to right the ship and remove spreadsheet frustration from your life. So if that's of interest to you, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. And for the last 6 or 7 years, it's been our mission to help you get the most out of no-code tools. Now in this video, I'm trying to speak generically to no-code tools, but I will be highlighting one specific tool, namely Airtable. Airtable is a tool that we use all the time in the back end here at Gap Consulting, and it is the first no-code tool that we adopted as an agency. Now, again, we're going to be comparing this essentially to spreadsheets, but I don't want this to be just about Airtable. Do know that most of what I talk about here can be applied to pretty much any no-code tool. Now, before we get into the heart of the video, I first want to invite you to join me for a little bit of Airtable training. If you watch this and you're like, oh my gosh, Airtable's amazing, I need to learn all about it. Well, I've put together a free Airtable crash course. You can sign up using the link that I'll share with this video, or go directly to gapconsulting.io/Airtable-crash-course. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the thick of it. We're going to start with number 1. A key problem with spreadsheets is data management at scale. And when I'm talking about this, I actually do come from a background, having worked as a financial analyst. I used spreadsheets in my day-to-day operations all the time. And I built some really complex, very robust spreadsheets. And data management at scale can still be a problem with spreadsheets, especially when you get to just over 50,000 records and different rows in your spreadsheets. The calculations can get sluggish, especially if you're doing a lot of the more complex formulas like VLOOKUPs, index, match, things like that. They can really bog your spreadsheet down. I remember this one example where I had a spreadsheet and I would apply a filter to it, and it would literally take like a minute and a half just to apply the filter and populate the proper data to my screen. It was nonsense. If you're working in a spreadsheet environment, there's a great chance you're suffering from this. That is to say, data management at scale, it's not really a good fit for spreadsheets. What's the alternative you can use? Let's dive on into Airtable. So again, we're going to be using Airtable as kind of our example here. Inside of Airtable, I could have a bunch of different data points all here, each one of them being represented by rows, what we call records inside of Airtable. But we can apply very, very simply filters, groupings, and sorts. So all of our data can be very quickly and easily updated, and it is all browser based. So this goes a lot more quickly than some of those more robust spreadsheets that I've worked with in the past. Now, something else to point out is when we create these views, we can save the settings that we put into our filters, into our groups, into our sorts. We can color certain records. All of this is saved for the particular view, and we can build additional views. So if you like looking at rows and columns like me, because you're coming from spreadsheets, you can build these grid views very easily. And now every time we put another view together, whatever groups we establish here, whatever filters we establish here, they're going to apply when we come back to see that view. So we can click back into grid 3 here, and we still have that grouping just automatically saved. We didn't have to go anywhere, save the file, none of that nonsense. All of this is just point and click, pretty easy, and a huge upgrade from your typical spreadsheet. The second big thing about using spreadsheets and where they usually fail is collaboration. So for example, in my previous life, working in spreadsheets when I was in finance, we had these situations where, people would have local spreadsheet files saved on their computer. They would override certain formulas and things that had been put into that file. You would get a file back. You wouldn't know that formulas were broken. It was nonsense, right? Nobody was using the updated, most recent version. And ultimately, there was not what we call a single source of truth. Data was kind of floating around and you never knew if you were working with the most current data or not. This makes spreadsheets virtually unmanageable. So if you're suffering from this problem, you might want to consider no-code tools. Now, how does a tool like Airtable deal with this? Well, first of all, we can choose what people can see when we assign them permissions in interfaces. So this is getting a little bit more advanced in the way we use Airtable, but we build our data in the data section, and then we go to interfaces to share that information. So you can see it's all drag and drop as the example shows you here. We can get dashboards going, we can show charts, and ultimately we can put permissions around this so that people can only see the records we want them to see, and they can only edit the things that we give them permission to edit. So there's a lot more control over this. Now, in addition to this, we also get to overcome those broken formulas because we are not giving people control at the data level. So let's flip back into the database here. If we have formulas that we write, and we can write them in Airtable just like we would in Excel, there are some slight differences. But believe me when I say that I came from that Excel background and I really learned pretty quickly how to write formulas in Airtable. They're very similar. So once we have these built, we can write these formulas. We can even use AI to help us generate formulas. But ultimately, when it's done, the people who are using the data on the front end of things that we share the interface with, they never get access to these formulas. So we don't have to worry about these broken formulas and different versions of data. We always have one version of the data. It's always up to date, and formulas are never breaking. That's going to take us to my third point, which is data integrity and data validation. So when we're working in spreadsheets, there are very few controls over what type of data people can put into that spreadsheet. And it can get a little dicey, especially when you've got people on your team who, let's face it, don't know how spreadsheets are really working. I've worked with a lot of people, even in finance, who did not really have a good understanding of spreadsheets. So how does Airtable overcome this? Well, every single piece of data that we're collecting, again, this is an example database setup, but it has for every field its own specific expected data type. So here we're looking at long text. We can enable rich text formatting. We can even allow AI to generate text here based on other things. Here we have assignees. These are people, users in our Airtable account that we can assign it to. We can't put other types of data in these fields. Thirdly, we have our status field here. This is a drop-down. We can only select one thing at a time. This is not a multiple select, but one thing can be selected and it has to be from the existing options. We can even assign default options so that when new records come into existence, they automatically adopt certain values. This is incredibly valuable because it's going to allow us to make sure that when we're collecting data, we're collecting the right data. Airtable has many different types of fields and therefore types of data that can be collected. We can stipulate the type of data here and even include more robust things like attachments, multiple selects, dates, formulas, as I've already demonstrated, etc. There are many different types of data that we can collect, but the same rules apply. When we set up our data schema in the back end, users can only put that type of data in that field. Furthermore, when we're over here in interfaces, we can also even further validate the data and set up certain rules like if you're entering a number, it has to be more than 1,000. Or if you're entering text, it has to be fewer than 500 characters. We have so much control over the data that we collect. So this is blowing spreadsheets out of the water. If you're getting frustrated with your data validation, give this a look. The fourth way that spreadsheets are probably failing you comes around to automation. Well, really, it's their limited capacity to automate. Spreadsheets, yes, have macros enabled, but you have to be pretty sophisticated in order to write these macros. And then generally, it's pretty difficult if you want to communicate with third-party software. That is not the case with Airtable at all. As I'm demonstrating here on my screen, Airtable has automations built into the platform, and we can set up automations over a number of different conditions. When records match certain conditions, when we receive form submissions, when records are created, when records are updated at a scheduled time, etc. We can trigger all of these automated processes to happen in the background based on those conditions. And then whatever we choose, we can add these additional actions. So what is the actual automation itself? What is going to be completed? What is actually happening here when this automation goes into effect? Sometimes that involves dynamic data. Sometimes we need to update certain fields or certain records. Now we can do complex automation like this right inside of the Airtable software. So no longer do you need these complex macros that you're writing in your spreadsheets. You can now go on, build some no-code automation. Anyone can do it, and you don't have to know how to code in order to get started. You can build some really robust stuff and actually save a ton of time on the back end as well. This takes us to our final point, which is the complexity in visualization. Now, I kind of hinted about this earlier, but let's face it, most people don't like looking at rows and columns. I do. I'm unique in that way. I'm definitely a little nerdy. But chances are good that you're sitting here thinking, I hate rows and columns. And if that's the case, you're gonna love no code, specifically here, Airtable. When we're building our views, as I demonstrated earlier, we put a bunch of grid views into play. But there are so many other options down here on the bottom left that you can choose from. You can display your data in calendars, in galleries, in Kanban views, in timelines, in lists, in Gantt charts, etc. And these are just the internal options to us. Don't even get us started when we go into interfaces. We have so much flexibility about how we are going to build the data that we're sharing with our team. So we build these interfaces pretty simply, and it's really just like deploying your own app. You can build dashboards, forms, timelines, calendars, all the other things that we mentioned before, like Gallery and Kanban. It's all available here. We can display our data in a way that our team actually wants to see it. And on that note, something you can't do very easily in spreadsheets is remove those pieces of information that are irrelevant for certain teams. People get overwhelmed with overloaded data, right? In a tool like Airtable or other no-code tools, we can selectively remove certain fields and only show certain teams the stuff that they care about. It's going to make their work that much easier. I know I went quickly in this video, but I hope you got a ton of value from it and that you give Airtable a try. If you enjoyed what you saw here, please consider subscribing to the channel. We put out a lot of great content like this, but more importantly, keep on building.